Well, welcome everyone to another Wednesday evening Clear Mountain live stream. Today with special guests, my parents. So this is Sarah Conover down below me. Hi, Mom. And
Hello, Ajahn.
there we go. And this is Dad, Douglas Robnett, up on the top right. So thank you both for coming on. And where are you both located at the moment, if I can ask?
You have my permission to ask.
Thank you. Thank you.
Anytime. I'm in Winthrop in the yurt.
And I'm in Spokane.
Where I grew up, yes. And we thought today it would be meaningful to have a session where I got to interview my parents just about their experience on their own spiritual paths, but also what it's been like to have a monastic as a kid, or a kid as a monastic, and what that journey has been like. I think it'll just be interesting to talk about, and also hopefully will be something that other parents can kind of look at from time to time, perhaps. So to begin with, Mom, Dad, what was your kind of first experience at a monastery with monastics, and what was that like for both of you?
I think you should go first on this one, Doug.
Go for it, Dad.
I'm having problems remembering.
Or maybe your first meaningful, like when you first began to have faith in it, or your first meaningful experience.
Yeah, I mean, I think that my first experience at a monastery was probably during your novice ordination in Thailand. So that was just, we were sleep deprived, jet lagged, and I think I totally scarred up your head trying to shave you for the ceremony.
Yes.
Yeah. Emotional scarring as well as physical. And it was so that was sort of otherworldly, and it was Thailand, and it was hot and buggy. I think that what I would consider probably my real initiation in monasteries was going and spending 2 weeks at Abhayagiri. And that was early on in I mean, you weren't there. You were still in Thailand, but it was like, I think you'd been a monk for a year or two, and it was wonderful. It was sort of foundational for me. It worked for me, the whole schedule, and and just a way to give back.
Why was, if we can just rest on you for a second, why was that meaningful? You'd been Buddhist for quite a while. You'd been meditating before this. So why did you find the monastery or the monks to be, why was it a different experience?
Yeah, there was a really huge sea change for me, and I think for Sarah also, when sort of entering the monastic aspect, moving from secular Buddhism to more of the monastic form. And I think, partially it's seeing the devotion of the monks and the sincerity and the rigor of practice. And then there is always Ajahn Pasano, who I just find completely delightful and inspiring. And I could just sit there and listen to him for a long time. So there's that. And then there was also, it felt, there's a sort of, there's a part of it that when I'm around monastics and helping keep the monastery going and feed monastics, in the early years, I felt like that was just the same as feeding you. So that's, and that was really important to me. Later on, it's sort of turned on its head where it's easier for me to view, trying to think if this is true, but to, what I want to say is to view you as all monastics too. So it goes, taking care of all monastics is taking care of, my kid, and then, but also as I've watched you develop, doing things for you and supporting you is just supporting this asana.
And I do want to come to you in a second, Mom, but I just to rest on that first trip to Thailand, despite the buggy, sleep-deprived part of it. I remember you speaking about one morning when we were walking through Bangkok together, and a woman offered something. Do you remember that?
Yeah.
Why was that important to you?
So it's and I think that this is relevant for a lot of what a lot of people who are unfamiliar with monastics think about monastics, and it sort of points to the difference between going for alms and begging. And so we were in downtown Bangkok. We're staying in an Airbnb in just some nondescript place, and there was an alley behind it in the morning. Like all these vendors just set up their wares, and they were just it wasn't food for wealthy people. It was just people on their way to their jobs would stop and get something to eat. And so you and I went down, and there was a woman there, and I always get a little choked up when I tell this story, but she when she saw you, she was just you could just feel how meaningful it was to her, and she wouldn't let us pay, and she gave you like pretty good amount of food, and then you did a blessing for her, and she was just crying, because I don't think, I mean, my story around that is that set up in that alley where she was, she didn't have, and she probably had to work every day, she didn't have a lot of contact with monastics, and so the opportunity to offer her generosity was really profound. And it's when I realized that it's not people offering their generosity isn't transactional in the way we usually think of. It's not like, oh, you feed me and I'm gonna bless you, and then it's all like works out that way. It was more like her heart really needed that opportunity to give, and this profound moment. And then I remember after we left that, I said, how do you handle that? People like, taking your blessings and sort of everybody bowing to you. And you said, oh, you just got to get over yourself at some point and just take it.
Thank you, Dad.
That's what I got to say about that.
That the first trip we took together in Thailand, or maybe the second, we walked Tudong, which is sort of pilgrimage, Mom, Dad, and me up in Northeast Thailand in Isan. And we'd walk through these remote villages. It'd be like this random Western monk, his mom with a flower umbrella, and the dad. And by the end, we had this joke of like, why do Thai people always look confused? Because we were just this complete anomaly in the countryside. So
yeah, every time we'd walk by, they'd be like,
so,
and then they try and herd us back to the busy highway.
So, Mom, what about you? What was your first? First, if you wanted to jump in on any of those specific things Dad said, but also, when was your first kind of significant moment at a monastery or with monastics?
Well, I think actually Doug covered a lot of that in 8 or 9 minutes. And being in a culture that, at least where we were, that seemed to have religion, Buddhism at its core, was stunning. And that, a street corner could turn into something sacred on the spot with a food offering and blessing. And just being around the gentleness of so many gentle men at the monastery was very touching, has a big impact, and you're held by it. In the American, I had different expectations when we came, back in the United States going to the monastery. I had trouble at first with the Bayagiri because of pushed a little of my patriarchy buttons, and I remember just spilling my guts out to Debbie at a Bayagiri, and she said, "Yeah, it's like that. It's hard for me too sometimes." And so it took me some time to get over, the model of holding forth, of a monk holding forth. I'd had enough of that in my life, but pretty soon, I made sure I went to some retreats with the Alokavahara nuns, and Aya Tataloka, I remember, once really talked me off the ledge that things will change and things are changing slowly. And and then to see, there was a special monk that we saw that used to feed fish. What was his name?
Which fish feeding
Ajahn
was
Tong.
Ajahn Tong.
Ajahn Tong, yes.
Yeah. So he's a pretty magical guy, and near a rubber plantation. And I almost felt like he even controlled the weather at times. He's remarkable. And it was very touching. We had many, many moments, and people were so generous to us as parents of a farang who'd, quote unquote, given our son to the sasana. And when he could have many other opportunities in the United States, it was very touching all around. And yeah.
And Mom, what was your your journey with me in robes has not been, it's been up and down some, and not easy always. I think routinely your last day with me, usually you'll cry a little bit.
Okay, yeah, hard in that way, yeah.
So,
Yeah.
so how did you deal with what was a loss at first, maybe, and maybe still is, like, how have you kind of conceptualized what you lost when I ordained, and what has come out of that in terms of how has that journey evolved over time?
Yeah, well, I think some of your audience knows that the moment you were born, I thought, monk. So in a certain sense, it wasn't a surprise, but it's like when you have a child, how can you tell somebody what it's like to have a child? So it seemed like a great idea. Okay, you're going that way. And I didn't really know what that meant, always on the other side of the world. And I think, at first it was weird, participating in our old traditions as cultural Christians with Christmas and Thanksgiving and things like that. But because we're practitioners, we've had an overlap that I never would have guessed, that has given us a way to stay very, very close, more close than I think had you not been a monk. I think, you would have had your own life, and you would have been, and we would have been, you would have loved us, but maybe we wouldn't have had a common overlap. And the Dhamma has given us tremendous overlap. And I feel like it, as it's evolved, it's not a loss. It's one of the most amazing blessings of my life. And I think that parents who aren't necessarily Buddhist practitioners will find, if they're patient, they will see their monastic, male or female, blossom into something gentle that nobody could have imagined. I didn't know what it would look like as you evolved, and I didn't know that it would actually give us an arena to always be able to talk, to talk about our hearts. And that's not always the case with others. And I know that was hard for some of your relatives who thought you had run away to the other side of the world. You did.
I did.
But you did. But you came back. And what they've seen, and that funny question of, like, well, what's he doing for the world? Do you ask that of a minister? it's pretty obvious. Um, um, and they've seen it over time. They've seen the unfolding, and yeah.
Thank you, Mom.
I think the other thing for parents and family members and friends to just little stories. Last time you were here in Winthrop, you saw your old friend from high school, Peter, who I think was feeling a sense of loss. And after you spent a couple days with him, he was like, "Yep, it's still Nate. It's Nisabho Nate." So, anyways, it's not like you disappear, or like who you are completely disappears.
Yeah, and also I want to say that the family gatherings, it's Thanksgiving is kind of ridiculous. You have to eat early, and the rest of us.
I get a soda during the evening.
Yeah. But the costume, the robes bring a different level of conversation, and people may have nostalgia for like, oh, we used to have a certain Christmas and Thanksgiving, but really, if you listen to most of the conversations of those old get-togethers, they're not necessarily meaningful. They actually can turn political and not nice, and it's a beautiful thing when somebody. I know that Nisabho, with some of his relatives who didn't understand it, he still does go straight to something meaningful to talk to them about.
Thank you, Mom. Dad, what are your thoughts for what's been your journey with what's been lost, and what would you or gained, and what would you tell to a non-Buddhist parent dealing with either a child just going in deep to this whole Buddhism thing, or even ordaining?
Yeah, I'm not sure I can add much to what Sarah said. I think Sarah mentioned patience, and I think wait, see, it's like being a monastic. What I've watched is you polishing your goodness, and I've seen it with a lot of other monastics too, and it's just really hard to argue with that. And and I think that it's going to be hard. When I dropped you off at the airport to go to Thailand, I really don't cry much, but that was one of the times. And then after our first time in Thailand, I went when we were flying back home, I went into the airplane bathroom and just sobbed, which is also not something I usually do. So there've been some hard times, but I don't think I have any loss at all. Just huge gain, and especially in the last. There's gain with you and who you become and what you're doing, but also with the Seattle, the Clear Mountaineers is like such a huge gain. I feel like there's just this, there's a really deep, meaningful community there that just blossomed, and I really want that to go out loud and clear. That might be one of the most valuable things in both Sarah's and my life is
we're held by it, and they hold you, you hold, you're maybe a light to we hold each other, and it's what an amazing thing for us as we age and have we're all sort of steering to the same North Star. Not all of us are on the liberation or bust train that the monastics are, but we are trying to polish, purify our heart and love better, and we feel it when we're there.
Thank you both. And what would you? There's a few questions I want to ask. One is, you've actually taken a somewhat monastic step yourselves these last few years in terms of selling your old house, moving somewhere. What's that been like, Mom?
Hardest thing of my life. And I have special conditions. Being an orphan, we thought, well, we'll just sell things and see what finds us. Well, the title of my memoir about being orphaned is called Set Adrift. And indeed we have been. But so it's been a training over the last 3 years of being more.
And what are you doing exactly? Sorry, just give perhaps some context these last 3 years.
Oh yeah, we sold our house, and then we were waiting around to see what would happen, and we'd been looking here and there, like, should we move here, there? We know we wanted to be closer to a monastery, but none of them were necessarily where we wanted to be. And so then we purchased some land with Nisabho's best friend of high school, and decided to set up a hermitage, and had these great plans, a beautiful small house design. We had our builder lined up. We were first in line. It was all perfect. And then it all fell apart in certain ways. That we got run out by fire. We got stuck in a building moratorium. So it's been tough. And, I joke that it's like one step mystery or mistake, but it feels more and more like something beautiful will unfold. Again, that word patience. And sometimes it's hard for me. I there's definitely been tears involved of not saying I have this nest, but it's been a major lesson in not reaching for false homes. There's only, I think most of us think home is a particular building, but we have this beautiful community we're cultivating, and it sounds so cliche, but really home might be in the heart. And so it's been abandoning these reaching for false homes, which Doug and I had been doing, trying to find the right place to land.
And to give a little more context also, the hermitage, which you both abandoned the Spokane home for, is in part aligned with a dharmic purpose, in the sense of hoping to have a few huts where monastics and lay people could stay and practice to some extent.
That's correct.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't give that.
No, it's okay.
But it's rough. It's taken longer, right, Doug? It's taken longer, and there's patience and hard work in that, and so much for plans always. The way you think.
We've each found a little bit of equanimity in not trusting planning anymore.
Mm-hmm.
What's going to unfold just seems to be happening. We can make all these plans, but you're just going to get knocked down. And so yeah, there's letting go of that is kind of liberating. And I'm not saying you totally let go of it, but mostly.
Why was this plan more meaningful to you than kind of doing a kind of standard retirement? I mean, you cut short your career by a few years. You lost a decent amount of retirement by doing that. Why? I think you've had many friends ask you this as well.
You go, Doug.
Because I wanted to up my practice, and I didn't find that I could do that when I was working. There's too much conflict and too many time constraints, and I could, we have. Well, we thought we had a good enough retirement. I'm not sure now, but what was the question again?
Well, also when Doug retired, there he was at home doing finances and running errands, and that is not a life. And so he was probably more of the initiator of, let's sell the home and see what happens.
In my defense, I'm really good at running errands.
Truly.
But yeah, it was soul withering. So we wanted to do something that was meaningful. We also really wanted to live in community, and with a combination of a hermitage where we could have a place to support monastics, but also as like a sneaky way to be around monastics, so we could
and the other half
lots of wisdom, and then also with the two other young couples here, which is really starting to blossom. Community feels like home. to me. Clear Mountain feels like home, and some of the other communities we have feel like home.
And we hope to have be able to, purchase something near wherever Clear Mountain ends up, so we can be in both places.
We're working on that. We're working on that,
Yep. More patience on our part. Treading water, patience.
I hear property in Seattle is pretty affordable. So,
Yeah.
What?
Fourth precept. So, one thing I wanted to ask you too is, for people trying to figure out how to be a couple while both practicing, and to find that mix of seclusion, because there are real sea changes that happen internally in your life when you start to really dedicate yourself to this path. So what thoughts would you have for couples who are trying to, support each other in their practice? What changes would they have to make, maybe, or should consider compared to their past relationship, etc.?
Well, you'll notice we're in two places right now. So we have a little bit we are able to do that. I think that both being the Dharma gives you the absolute best tools you can have for a relationship. The seclusion part you have to figure out as time goes on, but you bring in all your tools of compassion, looking at the other person's conditioning, and unstore. The thing that happens with couples often is you start storing them up. You always do this. You never do that. And you have to continually unstory and keep it fresh. And trust in the Dhamma's goodness as a wonderful North Star, and also trusting in your partner's goodness. And always, and not the least of which is always one, never being totally sure, that Ajahn Chah thing. Are you sure? Really questioning your views. Doug,
Yeah.
you want to add to that?
Yeah, I think, having the Dharma in common is what's allowed us to, stay married and just have a common vocabulary, and to be not looking at the dirty socks as the issue. And, but I'd also, I know that there's, there's, in my experience, there's not too many couples in the West who are Buddhist practitioners. Like Sarah and I are kind of an oddity, and but I'm seeing, some potential for that in Clear Mountain. I just, going forth and taking on robes isn't the only path to like a really strong practice. And I think that in a relationship where both parts of the relationship are committed, you sort of, it's like leapfrogging off of each other. It's just, it's really been another one of the huge blessings in my life, is having, Sarah as my partner in this.
Kalyana Mita, we hope, a spiritual friend.
Yep.
Yeah.
And one thing also is, Mom, how have you been able to, what advice would you have for people struggling to, when encountering a almost completely male institution, which does fall into kind of dynamics that a lot of women have worked with for a long time and had difficulty with. You have seemed to come to like a measure of peace around it, and have a lot of faith and a lot of monk teachers. But what thoughts would you have for someone working with that?
A couple things. One is, I have a theory that the older monastics in the Wet Thai forest tradition have been waiting for younger monastics to come along and start changing things, which I feel like you're doing. And And to get to know the bhikkhunis that are out there and support them. I was, on the board of Alliance for Bhikkhunis for a while. And they're needing more volunteers right now. But actually, I think a lot of people stepped up. Also, go to Shrivasti Abbey. If you want to see a really vibrant community of almost all women. Now there's 3 or 4 men. It's there. It's very inspiring. And yeah, sometimes you need a strong leader like Venerable Chodron, who wanted to start a monastery and whose goal was to bring a big group together and to grow it. And I'm not sure that is the same for the Thai forest women, the ones that have drawn close. It might be part of the practice being different, but yeah.
In terms of wanting to start a large monastery.
A large training monastery.
Yes.
While keeping your sanity. Yeah. Not too many people could pull that off. And I think Venerable Chodron is one of those rare people.
Dad, do you have any thoughts on that?
Can I ask you a question?
No. Do you have any thoughts on the... did you say, could you ask me a question?
Yeah. I mean, I have thoughts about everything, but
yeah, you can ask me.
People don't need to hear them all. What's it been like for you having parents who are practitioners?
Yeah, it really is interesting to watch people navigate this, and we aren't just speaking about. I didn't want this interview just for children and parents who are dealing with a kid going off to ordain, but even a kid going to the monastery more. I mean, we can look a lot like a cult from the outside, and it can really, people think they're losing their kid, and I think there's that real moment of tension initially when someone's moving towards going deeper into a monastery where they think there's a trade-off. Either I'm pulling away from my parents, from my relatives, from my friends, but it's counterbalanced by this thing I feel like I need to do. And it's just a false equation, because what you see over time is, yes, like the goodness of ordination or of practice, just going to a monastery, really does flow backwards to the people you love, even if they initially don't understand at first. Almost 100% of monastic parents, even if they aren't Buddhist, eventually become quite supportive. And I think it's because it's hard to deny that the goodness you see happening in a child who's really dedicating themselves to something meaningful. And so I think it's so important to, when you're balancing that equation of like how deep or how far do I go to a monastery, or how deep do I go into this practice, to not think of it as win-lose at all. It just, sometimes the benefits take a while to come around. And that's just been played out in Technicolor with you both, because our relationship has strengthened. We do have a common vocabulary. And there's a real ability to connect on a deep level, which I think we touched on before I was a monastic. But it's right there now, because what else are we going to talk about, So it's been really beautiful. And and you just see the Dharma work on people. I've seen it in both of you. Yeah, Mom, what were you going to say?
Well, I also don't want to underplay the fact that filial piety is it's a very strong ethic in monasticism, and it's not necessarily in our culture at all. And to feel respected in that way and taken care of in that way it's a beautiful thing.
Thank you both. Well, gosh, I think if people want to type some questions in the live stream, you're welcome to, but we have a little bit longer right now. One thing I did want to ask you both is, what have been one or two of the most meaningful interactions you've had with a monastic teacher? I know you mentioned Ajahn Tong, Longpo Pasano, Longpo Anan. You've definitely been around quite a few, Ayananda Bodhi, etc., Venerable Children. So, yeah, can you bring out any certain moments which really struck you or stayed with you?
You want to go first, Doug?
No, you go first.
No, I'm thinking. Venerable Chodron, even though it's not my practice, Tibetan Buddhism, we've been very supportive of the Abbey for over 20 years. And she says things to me that take me about 3 years to kind of get. They stick with me. Like one time when we had her at our lake place and I was working on my memoir and I had a whole wall of things about the memoir, she just said, "What's this really about?" Another very poignant part for me was Ajahn Karunadamo. When I did a cold turkey getting off antidepressants, and I was at a Bhayagiri, and I couldn't stop crying. And I thought, well, whatever, I'm going to tea time and see what
I remember that. Yes.
see what he does with me. And he said two things. He said two really important things. One was that my grief over not seeing you as much as I wanted was good practice for loss. But more than that, he said, if you give whatever you're going through just lots of space, it becomes much, much, much smaller. Yeah.
Thank you, Mom. Dad?
First, I want to answer Joseph's question, and that is that, we were Buddhists before Ajahn Nisabho ordained.
And actually, I would like you to speak to that in a second. I'd love to actually ask you about your journeys into Buddhism.
Okay, that means I have to make my answer quick.
No.
So being around the monastics at Sravasti has always been profound. Being around the monastics at Abhayagiri always feels like going home to me. Like I'm just so comfortable there. And then there was the time we got to Upatak, Ajahn Suchito.
Yeah.
Days, and that one just took me to my knees. I mean, he just every motion of his is like this being from somewhere else. It's like he has to draw himself back into the normal world in order to talk with you. That's what it felt like.
But there was no next in his step. I've never been around someone that had no next in step. And also, he was the first person. We asked him, what feels like home to you, Ajahn Suchito? And he was like, that's the most strange question anyone's ever asked me. So it was our first kind of like, home might not be a place.
Thank you both. So with Joseph.
Oh, there's a great question from Ian.
Well, Joseph had a question.
Actually, yeah, those are both good questions. So we have enough time for both. So first, what were your paths to Buddhism, both of your?
Sarah, you better cover this one.
Okay, and I don't see the other question. I was a religious studies. I was a religious studies major and was very disappointed in all my religion professors that they weren't more inspiring people. And, in terms of like, doesn't that make you, I kind of thought it would sort of transform them in a way. And it was when I was trekking in Nepal that I was trekking alone and met a Tibetan monk who gave me a smile that was the most radiant and free thing I'd ever seen on anyone's face. And I thought, that's my compass. And then when we were in the Bay Area looking around for how are we going to raise the kids? What do we, Doug was a philosophy major. I was religious studies. And I went to Spirit Rock one night after we had kind of done the whole circuit in the Bay Area. And I came back, and Jack Kornfield was teaching. Way too good a storyteller, but he admits it. And I came back and I said, I think I found what we were looking for. And after that, we stayed with it.
What was it about it that made it feel like it was what you were looking for?
It was a praxis, not necessarily a dogma, and leading forward with investigation and heart. Nobody was telling me how it was. And yeah.
Thank you, Mom.
Same.
All right. So yeah, do I have siblings? If so, what's their take on it? Some people know you even though they're not Buddhist by name, or have the same vocabulary in that realm. And my sister was that way. You know, she visited me in Thailand, and you know, she's way more. She's really fun, and I think the monastery was not her ideal place to spend time in Thailand. But she did come away and say, you know, it was like seeing an endangered species in its natural habitat about me, and she got me around that. And so it's interesting. Yeah, sometimes there are family dynamics, and yet I feel like my sister at a deep level really does get me, and we have really wonderful conversations when we get the chance. So that's worth a lot. She did figure out quite quickly that I can't receive food unless she actually hands it to me. So she would like put a chocolate bar like right in front of me, but not actually hand it to me.
Or a milkshake.
Yeah, no, she's very good. She's very good.
She's very funny about it. Yeah.
You know,
And
it makes me think, you know, karma is a real thing. Like I mean, for me, you know, we are living out this longer story, and we each have parts of it that you know, kids are born loaded, and we each have parts of it that it's hard to fathom, but you gotta live that out. And she's a great person. She's the most fun person in the universe.
Really fun. The person has more fun in samsara than anyone I know.
One thing I just wanted to bring up quickly is Rick in the chat mentioned how his family's had tension around his own path. And I just want to point out also there is a sutta called the Akankeya Sutta, and it's if a bhikkhu should wish, and if a bhikkhu should wish that one of the things it says is that if one wishes that their parents or relatives after passing away recall them with faith, then they should fulfill the precepts, not neglect meditation, etc. And for me, that's always really been an indication by the Buddha that even if someone's conditioning and personality, like people in your family, you might be mentioning Rick, don't understand at this moment what you're doing, there's, you know, if you do believe in rebirth, that there are moments where the chitta is clear, and even if there's been some obstacle to that communication during your life, it doesn't mean that that it won't have an effect and isn't having an effect now in a way that you can't see. So I think that's always been kind of heartening, and there's something in the canon around it too. So,
and I think also for Sarah and me, it just feels like there's so much more in play than we can even fathom. Like we didn't, you know, we're blessed. You know, we didn't have to do much to raise Ajahn Nisabho. Kept him reasonably fed.
You two did a great job.
Thanks. But yeah, there's something else. There's a bigger picture here. So that somehow for me that addresses what Rick said.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And just to be gentle and loving, and I think Ajahn Nisabho's the way he is with relatives, to ask meaningful questions, you know, go right to the heart. It's a beautiful thing.
And listen.
Yep. Listen well.
Shucks. Thank you.
Happy birthday, Ajahn Kabilo.
Yes.
Yeah, we are going to have to, but I wanted to bring up Ajahn Kovilo's question before we sign off. If there's time, Sarah and Doug, what advice would you give to a young monastic regarding how to be a good monk son or monk daughter? One piece of advice each, if you can.
You first time.
I would say realize that your parents and family members can probably be more of a challenge to your equanimity than any other force in the universe, and just give yourself some leeway there.
Mom?
That's a good one. Yeah. Let me just think about that. Just that the respect, the filial piety that we don't. It's not exactly a currency in our culture, and it is a beautiful thing that is hard to mistake as anything else. So respect and gentleness, and let them know that you have their best at heart.
Well, I love you both. It's been great having you. Come on and meet everyone. And yes, a big happy birthday to Ajahn Kovilo today. I don't know what we do. Let's wave to him. I think he's watching. Okay. So as to
Almost like a gift.
so as people know, generally on Wednesdays we'll all join on Zoom. Now I'll paste the link into the chat, and those who don't have access to the chat for whatever reason, just go to clearmountainmonastery.org and you'll see the link to the Wednesday evening live stream and Zoom there. And for those of you in Seattle, just keep an eye out for the parents. They'll be popping up soon enough. I hope so. And Mom, Dad, love you both.
View.
Okay.
See you in the Zoom room.
See you in the Zoom room.